Well, welcome to Raised in Alaska. I recently did an annual service on my Argo and ended up replacing two of the main outside bearings on this machine. This is what one of the bearings looks like when it's all new and ready to be put in. And I wanted to figure out what went wrong with it, so I took the bearing and cut it apart with a grinder so I could look inside of it and do an inspection. So, hey, if you want to see what's inside the bearing, come along for a quick video. You can see it moving right there. Okay, so we're going to do a little bearing inspection here. These two are factory Argo bearings that you'd buy from Argo, and this is an aftermarket bearing. This one is brand spanking new, not been used yet. This is the same bearing, but I've pried off the dust covers, and there's a cover here, a cover underneath that, and then like a rubber gasket that goes in there to keep stuff out of it on both sides. And so on this one, I've pried all that stuff off so you can actually see the bearings in there. And here, I mean, it doesn't have grease in it. Doesn't sound janky though. There's a touch of play. See if you can hear that. Now I can feel that moving just a hair. You know, once you get all the stuff on there, boy, that's tight. That doesn't move. But that's only the dust covers and things like that. So something in here got it so there's a little play in there. You can even see that move, right? Look at this. Look at the collar through there. You can see that moving. This is the aftermarket bearing. This bearing was only on my Argo for one season. I bet I didn't put 500 miles on the machine. And see if you can see this move. Look at the movement on that. You can hear this. That's got a lot more play in it than the other one. Although spinning it doesn't sound so bad. And so what I want to do is I'm going to try to cut these off and just look in there. I suspect we're not going to be able to see anything obvious, but I'm curious anyway. Okay, I've split all of these bearings. Well, not the new one, of course. But if I split these other two, I ended up having to use a grinding wheel. The metal on these is so hard that I didn't think that it would go well with my bandsaw. And so here, let's take a look first. That feels smooth in there. It doesn't look like it's worn, although you can see a pit there, but that could be from something else. Here. It's smooth in there. Let's take a look at these balls then. And see, there's no rust anywhere in here. The balls appear to roll just fine. It doesn't look like there's any damage. This was the aftermarket bearing, the worst of the two. And so what I'm going to pontificate here, because it's not rusted, it's not pitted, and again, this is only a year old. I'm just going to pontificate, and I could be wrong, that what had happened in here is that this got grooved out a little bit so that this could wiggle back and forth, because I don't see any physical damage. And so that's going to be my guess. And again, you know, this fit on top of there, and it's not going to fit like it did before, obviously, because I split it. And that spins in there. And without any physical damage to this inside of here, or wearing or physical damage to these balls, it almost has to be that this groove here either got wider or these balls wore down some. But when you spin them this way, they don't feel egg-shaped. They don't look malformed. I think that this is just a cheaper bearing, and that was the problem there. And so let's take a look
So this is the Argo factory bearing. And again, you can see there's no rusting or pitting in there. You can see the heat. That's from the grinder, but you can also look at this. Look at that. The thickness of this one is a lot more. It's more substantial that way, but there's no rusting, no pitting, no malformation there. Let's look at this other one, if it'll pop off here easy. There we go. Same thing, no rust, no pits. And these balls here, no rusting there. I mean, it's nice and clean. So what had to happen, I can't tell you how old this bearing was when it came out. But again, everything looks nice and clean. There's no rusting in there. There's no goofiness. There's no, well, you can see where I hit that with the grinder. So that everything looks fine. So again, on this one, I think what happened, I'm going to guess that either this main one here or this outside one here wore. Something's not perfect in there, or wasn't perfect. So that's interesting. I expected there would be some kind of rust, pit. Well, you can see I hit that with a grinder there too. But I expected we'd be able to see something, but it doesn't take much, and they're just not perfect anymore. This one here, again, look at that. That's just tight. And granted, it's got other things keeping it in there, but that's how it's supposed to be. So, I think what maybe I learned here is it doesn't take a whole lot. This is the aftermarket one. This is the Argo one. When I look at these, they look pretty similar. You can see that this is a little bit longer. Not that that necessarily matters. I do think, though, when I look at this, I think that the bearing holder is more substantial on the Argo bearing than the aftermarket bearing. The little rivets that go through that hold this tight, I think look more substantial on the Argo one. This collar here is the same thickness as this one. On the aftermarket bearing here, this Argo one is more substantial, and it was harder to cut through. This is harder steel when I was cutting through it, I think.
Well, in the end, I think I basically learned it doesn't take a whole lot for one of these things to not be perfect. I suspect that you could not replace them where they're not perfect and just wait for them to blow out. I've had some blow out in the past, but it's such a pain to change them out in the field. It seems easier to do it in the shop, and I think I'd rather spend the time and money doing it ahead of time than having to do it in the field and maybe even fixing something that didn't quite need to be fixed yet. Maybe it would have made it through hunting season. Maybe it would have made it to next hunting season. Maybe it wouldn't have. I don't really like that gamble so much. And so I'm still glad that I did it, even though they weren't horrible, but I think they were on their way out. Thanks for watching today.